Hello and welcome to episode 346 of Fergo on the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. Joining me as always is the glorious League Freak. You can also find on Twitter at League Freak. How you going there, buddy?
Going pretty well, Andrew. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Can't complain.
That's good. Yep. We'll get into that, though. I reckon we can make you complain.
I don't think it'll take much prompting, that's for sure. We can start with the mild one, and that is we've just gone through the first final match of week 2.
Yeah, the Manly Seagulls have absolutely smashed the Roosters. It was 42 points to 6, and it was a real bludger of a game. It just doesn't feel like finals football. The games are really poor. I remember at one point I looked at the TV, half paying attention to the game, and there was still 18 minutes left, and I was like, fucking hell, this is dragging on. But, you know, it's Volandi's ball, and all women love seeing lots of points scored, according to Peter Volandis.
Is it just women, or is it mums with kids?
I don't know if it's mums with kids. I think he just said women.
Women's? They like it when points are being scored while they're doing the ironing? Is that what he's at?
Probably, hey.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You see during the week that the NRL has decided to give the 16 NRL clubs a combined total of $7 million.
Was it $7 million each?
No, it's $7 million all up. So they get about a few $100,000 each for not getting home games this year.
That's not a huge amount. I guess it's something though. You know, it'd be interesting to know. And obviously, they've spent way more to have the games in Queensland. Because they've got to pay for accommodation and all that sort of stuff. But it'd be interesting to know how much clubs saved from not having to hire certain venues. There would be some clubs, I'm sure, probably saved a fair chunk of money in that regard, but every club is definitely.
Let's say the West Tigers at random. I mean, they only use 37 different grounds every year. They've saved a ton of money.
True, but the West Tigers, like, 2 of their grounds are the cheapest grounds in like high level grounds in Sydney to hire, and then I think their deal at Bank West, they might get paid to play there. So
you say that as though we've got competent people running the club. I'm getting into this a bit early.
That's a good point. I'm trying to think, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think who would maybe have the highest cost to run games. I would bet that weirdly Manly probably have some high costs.
Well, I mean, you've got all that asbestos to clear out, and
yeah, exactly. You know, everyone's got to
pay you got to pay all the fans to turn up.
Everyone's got to wear a mask. I mean, who even owns a mask?
Yeah. Roosters games would be pretty expensive because you get just very little back in return for when your home fans do turn up.
Having to hire flash mobs to pretend you've got a fan base.
You know, you only make about $300 in ticket sales, and that's if you sell every ticket for $150.
Exactly. It's interesting that they're playing these finals games at venues that have like 6,000 capacity. Like
that was interesting. I did see tonight's game was at Mackay.
Yeah, there's no doubt that's about cost saving. No doubt at all.
Yeah, I just thought it would have been. I would have thought it would have been better just to have every finals match played at Suncorp.
I kind of thought that that's what would have happened, or Suncorp, the stadium, Seabus Stadium, is it still called Seabus? Is it Seabus Stadium?
Yeah, Seabus Super Stadium
on the Gold Coast, and then the Townsville Stadium. You'd think that they'd chop and change between those, but like, I've got no problems if the NRL says, look, we want to cut some costs here. But it is funny because I was watching Channel 9's broadcast tonight, and they'll learn to run a TV station one day. It'll be really good. But they had the fake crowd noise going for this game. But then they'd go to halftime, and they'd be talking at halftime, and I don't know that they didn't realise that they still had the fake crowd noise going while the people at the desk were talking. And it's just like this white noise sound. It's really weird. It's like I keep on expecting, you know, the poltergeist to come out of the TV.
I don't even get why they do that. No. I've seen the excuses for it, and I just go, it still sounds so stupid.
I agree. People look back and they'll say, yeah, they had some games where there was nobody at the stadium, and so they made fake crowd noise come through the screen, and we don't know why to this day.
Yeah, it's mindless. The only reason I can think of is they might do it in order to try and drown out some of the swearing.
Well, yeah, I think that you're probably right in that regard. But
that's the only reason I can think they do it, because for any other reason, it lacks any value. It doesn't add anything to the broadcast.
True. And you know what? Like, I think people would be shocked at how much swearing is on a football field. Like, I remember there was an incident a number of years ago, and you and me were talking about it the other night. I won't bring up what it was. But, and a player was heard to say something through a microphone, and people were outraged. And all I could think of was, like, I never played a game of football where somebody wasn't called that.
Yeah, that's right. It's there's not a great deal of etiquette going on in the language department on the field of football. And I mean, let's be honest, William Shakespeare never did play sport.
Yes, that's true.
I don't think we should be expecting a whole heap of playwrights to start turning up all of a sudden now. Can you imagine if they did, though? How interesting the sport would be. Well, it's soccer, isn't it?
That's what soccer is. That's hilarious.
It's just a bunch of soft people who speak rather well but fall over every time someone gets within 15 metres of them. And then the acting goes on and the carrying on. You've seen that? I hear a lot of this. This is a funny takeout I get from soccer. Yeah. People talk about how great Neymar is.
Yeah.
So I look him up and I write in Neymar Sook.
Yeah.
I do that with every soccer player, just to see what sort of crap they've done at their absolute worst. And there's just footage of him, like, almost being hit by someone and just going on a constant roll on the ground for about 13 rolls too many. I'm like, yeah, you're really overselling that. It's not working anymore. What are you doing, man?
Remember they had that soccer player, I don't know if he still plays, but he would go around biting people all the time.
Was that Cantona?
No, it wasn't Cantona.
He fly kicked someone in the head. That was great. That's right.
Yeah, he did a Street Fighter move on
That's right.
But no, there was a player, and I don't know, I feel like he played for Liverpool, but I might be wrong. And he just had a number of incidents where he bit opposition players.
Actually, I remember that one. It was kind of recent too.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
Is it Messi?
No, it wasn't Messi. It was a pretty clean bite.
See, I was thinking of how I was going to say, bring that in, beat me to it. Yeah, I remember that. It was someone rather prominent. It was recent as well. I can't remember who it was now, but yeah, didn't mind a bite. I think he bit someone on the shoulder or something.
It's weird how a biter is a biter.
Yeah. They've had a few biters in AFL.
Well, we've had them in rugby league too, but it's not going there.
The biters in AFL tend to go for, let's just say they like meatballs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not the Ikea ones, I bet.
You've got like, well, they probably taste the same. Especially after about, 2 hours of running around.
Oh, Jesus.
Steamed and everything. You've got like this 6'2" length of a human, and that's the bit you choose to chew on. I don't get them. They're a special breed.
That's a weird one.
Yeah. What were we talking about again?
We were talking about stadium usage in the NRL.
Ah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, we've moved on from that now. Managed to get ourselves into AFL players biting nuts. There you go.
Yeah.
Manly won tonight 42-6. From the few highlights that I saw, the Roosters' defence in the middle of the park was atrocious.
Yeah, it was. And look, the game was scrappy. There was a lot of really weird refereeing decisions, lots of 6 again calls, especially early in the game, and it really killed the Roosters' defence really early on. Just not fun to watch. Rugby league has not been fun to watch this year. It's really sucks because, for all of the things that people would say about rugby league when we had 2 referees and people would go on about the supposed wrestling tactics and stuff like that, you could turn it on a rugby league match and know that you were going to see a good contest and it was going to be exciting. And you saw two teams tactically going at one another. And now it's just a mess. And, you got referees making weird decisions and everyone's super tired. And it's just not fun to watch. It's really not good.
Yeah, it's garbage. I mean, and that's the thing is, when all these dopey rule changes are now impacting what should be the toughest games of the year, we saw it impact State of Origin. And admittedly, Queensland weren't strong, but they've won games before and they've been clearly the weaker team. So Origin's usually always a pretty tight contest. That wasn't. And now we're into the finals and we've had several blowout scores already. There's nothing that you can do to try and make the games better at the moment. It's just, even when we're putting the best teams against one another, we're still getting shit games.
Yeah.
That's where we are at the moment. Apparently, in the past, when we remember during the early part of the year when the blowouts were just all the time, they're saying, you just need to wait for the weaker teams to catch up to the strong teams. Well, now we've only got the strong teams. Have they now got to catch up to the strongerest teams?
Yeah, exactly.
How the fuck does that argument work now? Obviously it doesn't, because it's a stupid argument in the first place. And
the thing I think about is, remember that year when Parramatta absolutely wiped the floor with the Broncos and they beat them 56 points to nil, I think it was, in a finals match. And you watch that game and it was like the Parramatta Eels played outstanding football and they just annihilated the Broncos. And you watch a game like that and you can still be like, that was incredible. Did you see that game? We've just seen the Seagulls beat the Roosters 42-6 and it was crap. And there's a big difference between those two performances. And, these games are so scrappy and then the referees are terrified anytime somebody, gets knocked over on the ground or, somebody gets up slowly. We've got to stop the play for 2 minutes and make sure that, nobody had their hair ruffled and things like that. It's just not fun to watch. And it's always been rugby league strength that we always said, look, it's one of the greatest games you could watch, and now it's not. And the thing that's changed are these rules that they brought in for no reason at all, and it's terrible. It's made the game really, really tough to watch.
Well, they brought it in for one reason, that was to keep Wayne Pearce employed. Let's be honest. What else was there?
Yeah, I know, right? It's just sad, because, I keep waiting for the moment when the game gets good again, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, we don't seem to be much closer to it.
No.
Right, what else happened before we get into this?
Brian To'o is out of the Panthers versus Eels clash.
What happened there? Is there anything major, or is it just a niggling injury?
Well, he had syndesmosis. He had surgery for syndesmosis and come back really quickly. Played last weekend, and he must have aggravated it again. So he's out this week. He supposedly would be okay to go the following week if they win against the Eels. But he's a big loss. He's going to be replaced by Naden, which, who knows how that will turn out. But it's a blow for the Panthers because he makes up so many meters for them off the back of kick returns and things like that. So, and it's going to be interesting to see how this game is between the Panthers and Eels. We talked about it with Elliot during the week, and the other thing we did is we talked about how you see the media talk about the hatred between the Panthers and Eels, and there isn't any. And we were both racking our brains trying to think of any times that there's been any sort of giant games that these two have clashed in. And we were like, this might be the biggest, most important game they've played against one another. And it was a really good conversation because, I've talked to a number of Eels fans that have felt the same way, that they don't really hate Parramatta. And as a Panthers fan, you like beating Parramatta. It's always good to beat Parramatta, but we don't hate them. And Elliot felt the same way as an Eels fan. He was like, it's great to beat Penrith, but don't hate them. It's just
I reckon that part of that Penrith enjoying beating Parramatta thing, though, really largely stems from the 80s. Because that was the first time we got to see Parramatta and Penrith both competitive at the same time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And we mentioned that, how, for the first couple of decades that them two clubs existed, to say they were bad is to undersell it. They were atrocious. If that happened now, there's no doubt they would fold or move them clubs.
Yeah.
And Parramatta, out of nowhere, really become really good really quickly. And then Penrith kind of did a similar thing 3/4 of the way through Parramatta's great run in the 80s. And then it's really been on and off. We were talking, there's never really been a time where both clubs have been about as good as each other at the same time. This is maybe as close as it's been.
Yeah.
There was maybe a little bit of a sliding doors moment in the late 80s, but it was very quick.
Yeah, it was around 85 when Parramatta was starting to tail off. I mean, they did win the premiership the following year, but it was the last time that they won a premiership, and they had a very aging roster. Penrith, obviously around 85, I think it was, when they made their first finals appearance. Backed a whole heap of young talent. It's funny how that works.
Yeah, I've heard that story before at Penrith.
Yeah. Put an awful lot of faith in a very talented young halfback.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. So yeah, it's always amazing how that works. I think a lot of it comes from that. But yeah, I do find it funny how the media seems to be trying to push some sort of rivalry between every single combination of games that's going on in the finals at the moment.
Yeah, because there's some rivalries that are real. The Storm versus Sharks, there's no doubt. Those clubs really properly don't like one another.
That one's legit. But the Manly Melbourne one, that's not as legit.
No, that's more about circumstance.
Yeah, that was one dust up in one game, and all of a sudden, we've got a rivalry going. Fucking steady on.
Yeah, exactly. And then you look at, say, the Sharks versus Dragons. That's real. That's real.
Yeah. That's a proper local derby.
Yeah, Roosters versus Rabbitohs. That's real. But then there's other ones where, as you say, another one, Newcastle versus Manly. That's real. Doesn't matter where they are going, how they're going. They both like beating one another.
That's right.
But, the Penrith versus Eels ones it's just a bit different. If Penrith got knocked out this weekend and Parramatta got into the grand final, it would be really cool to see the Eels win the grand final.
Furthermore, I can never accept that there's a rivalry between Parramatta and Penrith based on what happened when Penrith hooker John Farragher had his horrible injury which left him as a quadriplegic.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was in a match against Parramatta. And while he was in hospital recovering, Parramatta went and had they did a few fundraiser stuff to try and get enough money for him to support him and his family.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And they did not need to do that.
Yeah.
And this is at a time when clubs aren't exactly flush with money. It's the 70s. Everyone was struggling.
Yeah.
Yet they went and did that anyway. And you can't say there's a rivalry if they've got that much respect for one another. And that's the thing. I think a rivalry needs to have a balance of respect and hate. I don't think there's any hate at all, as you said, between Parramatta and Penrith. It's just not there. It's just all, it's just a respectful competition that they have.
Yeah.
I've never watched a Parramatta versus Penrith game, and it stood out to me as something that I'll always remember because of how much passion they had to try and beat one another. And I just go, it's just like every other game.
Yeah, true. I think it's really cool that we've got two teams in Western Sydney that are that good and that strong. But it's fantastic for the competition. And yeah, I mean, there's just nothing bad out of it. It's good, and they've had players go between the clubs and there's never really been any animosity that I can think of between the clubs when they've had players move, and juniors have moved a little bit between the clubs as well. It's just, but what the media's like the media this week was pushing a big rivalry between Wayne Bennett and Ivan Cleary. And I paid no attention to it because it just seemed like a load of shit.
As I said, they're trying to create a rivalry out of every contest wherever they can, even when it doesn't exist. I mean, we've seen what they've been doing with West Tigers versus Penrith now.
Oh.
All because of some disgruntled pop plan who didn't know whether he was sacked or whether he left.
Yeah,
that's basically it.
The weird thing about that one too is that like you look at the Panthers versus Eels and you can say, well, it's they're two big clubs side by side, and when I say side by side, for Sydney, there's a big distance between the two. Like it's a fair distance between the two, but then the West Tigers thing, there's just absolutely nothing there.
No.
Not a shred of anything.
No. The only team the West Tigers will have any chance of a rival with is the Cowboys. And I say, if there's any chance of one, that's it. Because generally most rivalries tend to come from teams that have faced each other in a grand final. It's not a general rule, but it seems to be a fairly solid component in most rivalries. There's been some sort of grand final between the two.
Yeah, true. Very true. And it's interesting that, and I've seen this as a Panthers fan, where there'll be other supporters don't like your club when it's going well. And
that's a common one, Tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah, and it's been kind of weird as a Panthers fan to go through that because it's not very often. We're normally good enough just for long enough that people like us, and then we go away. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so, but this has been probably, weirdly enough, the longest that we've been pretty successful in a row without winning a grand final. And so then there's been enough time for, opposition fans and people to just build a dislike for the Panthers. And there's something to be said for, how many people dislike you and why they dislike you, and very few clubs that are absolutely dreadful have people that dislike them that much. And so it's kind of like a pretty good marker of how good a club you are. Nobody is running around saying, you know what, I really, really hate the North Queensland Cowboys right now. Even right now, I hate them. No one's doing that.
No. I mean, you don't find too many people out there who absolutely hate the West Tigers.
Yeah.
And it's because they're constantly losers, they're not a threat.
Yeah.
No one has a rival with a team who's not a threat. It's as simple as that.
So, on this subject, let's talk about the review.
The review. The West Tigers, I believe it was Justin Pascoe, came out and said that there would be a review in all West Tigers operations, and he would be conducting it. And the first thing I thought is, that's like if someone who's a criminal has gone to a court and the judge says, right, how do you plead? And he goes, not guilty. Okay, now, do you think you're guilty or do you think you're not guilty? He says, I think I'm not guilty. Oh, well, you're free to go.
Yeah.
Everyone else is sort of sitting there going, hang on, there's video evidence of him being guilty. We've got that. We've seen it.
Yeah.
And he said he's fine. You would just let him go. He's fine.
And I've been thinking about this review, right? And I was thinking about when you normally see somebody say there's going to be a review in rugby league. And normally when it happens is when you've got a team that is expected to do well and something goes really wrong. And they sort of say, well, we thought we were on the right track, but something went wrong, so we're going to have a review. You see it a lot at state of origin level.
Yes.
Happens very often at state of origin level. And so every so often you'll see a club that will sort of be thinking, look, we should be a top 4 team. And then they'll miss the finals and they'll say, wow, we need to do a review on what went wrong. You don't generally see it with a team that hasn't made the finals for a decade.
No, that's true. And look, they did a review only a few years ago, courtesy of Brian Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So either they ignored everything Brian Smith suggested,
Mm-hmm.
which would be very highly likely,
Yes.
or Brian Smith's really shit at doing reviews. Which, given the rate of success he's had at fixing clubs, I would say that second one is not true.
Yes.
He knows what a successful club looks like. He's built plenty of them. And sure,
Brian,
he may not have won a premiership. He set these clubs up to win premierships.
100%. And there was a bit of criticism about Brian Smith this week, saying that he's a loser. And I found it a bit crass because Brian Smith took a number of clubs that were nowhere to grand finals. He was a bit unlucky that he didn't have a high-quality halfback at any of those clubs that he took to grand finals. And it's funny because when I mentioned it on Twitter, somebody replied back that Jason Taylor was actually a high-quality halfback when he had him. And I was like, no, you needed to watch Jason Taylor's career in the finals, man. But look, he was a bit unlucky, Brian Smith.
Jason Taylor was what you would call a toiler. Yes. He wasn't one of those brilliant creators. You won't see a highlights reel of Jason Taylor doing anything. That's not to say he was shit. It's just that that's not the sort of player he was. You put him in the same category as, say, good Chad Townsend.
Yeah, if I had to describe Jason Taylor as a halfback, I'd say, first of all, one of the greatest goal kickers of all time, no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
But I would say he gave you, if you say Andrew Johns is 100%, right? Jason Taylor gave you 78%, and his best game was 80%, and his worst game was maybe 72%. He was pretty consistent, but he didn't have the ability to kick up to the next gear, which is what every great halfback needs to have, and what you need to do in a grand final to win a grand final.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh.
What happened?
You just stopped talking.
Yeah. I was talking about when you win a grand final. That was it. That was my point.
Oh, right, okay. I thought there was more coming.
No, that was it. That's what she said, by the way.
Good save. Now, look, Jason Taylor, he that's the thing. He wasn't atrocious. He wasn't shit. He just wasn't, as you said, that elite level. Yeah. I think the other problem Brian Smith had, didn't he come up against Wayne Bennett sides in nearly every grand final he got to?
Well, he played his first two. He comes up against a Broncos team in 92 and 93 that is one of the great sides of all time and one of the great backlines of all time.
Yep.
And Wayne Bennett and just the Broncos at their very best ever. And then he ends up at Parramatta, turns them into something finally, and comes up against Andrew Johns in a grand final and a Knights team that had, a lot of premiership winning success from 97 still. And, from there he just always was just missing that star that could get the job done. And he was just unlucky. He wasn't a bad coach. Do you remember how many times he would come up against Wayne Bennett in games during the year? And, the Broncos would be red hot. And Brian Smith would have his team play tactics that would slow them right down. They'd kick for touch every time, and they'd slow the game down to their level. And he was a real thorn in the side to Wayne Bennett coach sides. He was a really, really good coach. It's just very unlucky. Yeah,
he was, yeah. I agree. I think it's pretty rude to call him a loser. I think he's, he won 305 of 600 games as a coach. That's better than half.
Yeah. And he did that going to clubs that were nowhere a lot of them.
Yeah, well, he started at Illawarra, and that was in the early to mid 80s when they were a bottom side.
Mm-hmm.
He moved to St George when they were struggling and got them into grand finals in the early to mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Parramatta, Remember during that Super League War, we might have touched on it during those episodes, how Parramatta were, when just after Sterlo had retired, they just went missing.
Yeah.
They fell down the ladder. They had nothing. They got lost. And so they went on this massive buying spree. And they spent millions of dollars on this core group of players that brought them zero success.
Yeah, and it was something ridiculous, like $15 million they spent on
Crazy.
players. Yeah, because it was Super League.
And then they brought in Brian Smith, and in the space of a few years, he got them from being this expensive, overrated, overpaid team to a team that blitzed everyone and just steamed us to the grand finals.
Yeah.
Then he went to Newcastle as well. So had a big impact there. The Roosters, I think he might have went there just after they had a few dramas as well.
Yeah, he stepped in as I think it was after Brad Fittler. He stepped in as like a caretaker coach for a little bit.
He was there for 2.5 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that he always went to a shit job.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at where the teams were after he left.
Yeah, they were always in a better position. They were always a different club. They were always a better club because he'd been there.
Yeah. So it takes a real talent to do that and to walk away when you know that the best is still yet to come for that team.
And I've got no doubt in his review, and you just got to look at his record over his entire coaching career and consultancy career in rugby league. I have no doubt he would have said to the West Tigers, junior development. Yep. And we know that they didn't listen to him. They just didn't.
It's the same thing that, with any luck, Tim Sheens will come in and will be doing an awful lot of. Because if you remember when Sheens first came to the West Tigers, there was just this plethora of young players coming through the local juniors ranks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the backbone of their premiership winning side in 2005.
Yeah.
So with any luck, there'll be a bit of a return to that. But yeah, that's where the Tigers are when it comes to a review. They don't know what they're doing, clearly. Staff writers over at Fox Sports has written this article.
Mm-hmm.
It says, in quotation marks, rudderless Tigers slam for, in quotation marks again, smokescreen review as calls grow for brutal Brooks, quotation marks, divorce. That is the worst headline ever.
That's quotation marks really interesting.
Yeah. And then the article's about former Tigers player Joel Kane, your mate.
Yeah. Gave me a shout out. Kane.
It's just comments that Joel Kane had made on SEN.
Oh, really?
And look, this is not criticism of Joel Kane. He's entitled to his views, and a lot of them I probably agree with.
Yeah.
But it's not journalism. It's not an article about anything that's actually news. It's just rehashing what someone said. And not someone within the club, just another commentator.
Yeah, and just talking about what he said on his show. Like, it's not like they heard Joel Kane talking about it and said, rang up Joel Kane and sat him down and said, hey, Joel, do you mind if we elaborate on what your thoughts are?
Yeah. They just listened to his radio show and went, oh, let's write down what he said and make it into an article.
Yeah. It's so strange that that's now part of journalism, hey?
Oh, no. So I'm not going to read the rest of it, but that was just a stupid thing there. West Tigers boss Lee Hadjipentalis hits back at season review criticism. I don't know if you know who Lee is.
Yeah, I don't know who he is, no.
Good.
I only remember the names of people involved in clubs that actually do something.
It says here, he's hit back at suggestions that the club's eagerly watched season review will not strike at the heart of the issues at the joint venture following another dismal year. The concerns stem from the fact that the review will be conducted by Chief Executive Justin Pascoe and Manager Adam Hardigan, the very same men who are coming under increasing scrutiny following a decade of woe. We'll call him Chairman Lee.
Okay.
That doesn't sound anything bad.
No.
Has since gone on the offensive, declaring the review will in no way be compromised by vested interests and that bringing an independent party would be unnecessary.
Of course, why would you bring in someone independent to do an independent review? That sounds ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. Here's the thing, and you only know what you know, okay? So if you're Justin Pascoe and you've been running this West Tigers club for many, many years, and they've failed many, many years you've been there, maybe he doesn't know what he should review that's wrong with the club. And that's the problem.
He clearly doesn't. Another thing is he doesn't know what successful looks like. So why would you get someone who doesn't know what success looks like to try and build success when they don't know what it looks like?
Exactly. Like his vast knowledge base of what a successful club is all about is like missing the 8 again and again and again.
Yes.
It's crazy that they would have even opened themselves up to the criticism by saying that they would do a review openly like that. Because, every team needs to do a review. Even the Melbourne Storm, when they get to the end of the year and they've got the trophy sitting in their cabinet, they would look at the season and look at what they've got ahead and look at their roster, look at their juniors. Everything's a review. You're reviewing everything all the time. So, to come out and say, we're going to do a big review, it's like, Justin, that's been your fucking job every single day for however long you've been at the club, and you're no good at it.
Yeah, exactly. But the idea of doing a review, but having part of the review conducted by people within the club, it's kind of like going to the doctor and saying, look, I'm not feeling well, but don't check me for this and this because I've done a Google search and I definitely know it's not that.
Like, what's the chances that Justin Pascoe's review says everything seems fine, but the CEO needs to go?
Exactly.
And if the review does not involve the CEO, then what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah, we're wasting time.
Yeah.
I'll say this about Pascoe. He is good at finding ways of bringing money into the club.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I'll give him credit for. That is something that he is good at doing because off the field financially, the club's doing pretty well. Despite all the COVID bullshit and the fact that they always lose games on the field, financially they're reasonably good. It helps that West Ashfield are keeping the whole thing functioning. But aside from that, the football department is doing rather well. So he doesn't need to be sacked. He can just move over into marketing or finance, something like that, where his skills are better utilised.
But I would say this, right? If you own a McLaren, it costs 40 grand for new tyres. Very expensive. Costs a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're spending a lot of money, but you own a McLaren. Or you can own an unregistered car that's up on bricks, and the costs are very, very low. And that's what I look at the West Tigers and I literally see. Their centre of excellence is literally sitting on bricks. Like, I'm not even joking. I've been there, I looked at the place, and it's a bunch of demountables sitting on bricks. Yeah. And so no wonder their costs are low.
That's right.
I could make that work financially.
Anybody could. It wouldn't be hard.
Yeah, and so
get yourself a shipping container.
Yeah, like if you run a club out of a shipping container, you're not spending much on rent. So I just think that when I hear people say, "Oh, he keeps things running pretty well financially," it's like, yeah, he would want to.
That's his only feature. Is it? At least he's not stupid enough to fuck that up.
True.
But Chairman Lee's gone on to say, I think we're more than capable of undertaking a review ourselves. And then he does a bit of flexing here. I'm a lawyer of over 30 years standing, so you can imagine I've asked a question or two in my lifetime.
Well, you've always got to trust a lawyer, don't you?
We have the ability and expertise on that board. We've engaged Tim Sheens to assist in that process. We've got a CEO who's well qualified, a general manager of football as well. There's an opportunity to use the expertise and delve into the club. No one knows the club as well as we do. No one knows what questions need to be asked as well as we do. No one knows the personnel involved as well as we do. This is the thing, Chairman Lee.
Yeah. What have they been waiting for then?
If all of you people know all of this stuff so well, why do you keep losing?
Yeah. It's like, dude, I don't need your resume, okay? And when it comes to his CEO and his qualifications, who gives a shit if they keep losing? Like, this isn't a fucking Seek profile, Chairman Lee. You got to run a football club, dude.
Exactly. So let's just do a quick count, Owie. How many premierships has Chairman Lee seen in his lifetime at clubs he's worked with?
0.
How many premierships has Justin Pascoe had as a CEO of a club he's been involved with?
0.
How many premierships does the coach currently have?
0.
I know, Michael Maguire's got 1, but not at the club.
Not at the club.
So that's the thing. All the talk is about trying to sack the person who knows what success looks like in order to keep the people who don't know what success looks like to stay in the job in order to try and, in their mind, build success.
And you know, the thing that you keep hearing is players don't really like Michael Maguire. They don't like his style. It's like the fucking coach doesn't like the fact that the players roll over and die in every game as well.
It's fucking frustrating.
It really is. Because, and here's the thing, no one's accountable. None of the board members, the CEO, they're not accountable. How can you be accountable if you're doing your own review?
Not even the players. You know, every time they get to this point where they say, right, it's time to do a review or we're not satisfied with what's going on, every time, get a new coach.
Yeah.
And then they complain about, we can't attract any big name players, and that must be the fault of the coach. And this is why Chairman Lee and the morons around him don't understand what it takes to be a successful club, because the elite players, they come because they buy into what a coach is building. And they are not going to come to a club if they know there's a fair chance that coach is going to get sacked before they see out their contract. And that's what the West Tigers have been doing time and time again. Sack a coach, sack a coach, sack a coach. The elite players look at it and going, I don't want to go there. Like, why would I sign up to go to a club where I don't know if the coach who's there at the moment is going to be there when I finish my contract, even though his current contract is longer than the one they're offering me?
Yeah, and when that coach is sitting down to negotiate that player and they say, look, we've got this plan for 3 years and stuff, players aren't stupid. They know that the coach doesn't even know if he's going to be there in 6 months' time, because that's just how this club operates.
And that's why they do not attract elite players.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they need to hang on to Maguire, because as Justin Pascoe said himself in the documentary, when he, trying to convince himself that, as a club, we like to make sure that we don't make the same mistake twice. You kind of have, because you've signed Potter. You got rid of him. He wasn't sacked, but you made it pretty clear he wasn't going to be retained.
Mm-hmm.
You signed Jason Taylor and sacked him. You signed Ivan Cleary and let him walk and then whinged and sooked about it. You then signed Michael Maguire, and now you want to sack him. All this time that you've brought in new coaches and let them walk away, or you've got rid of them, the club has not succeeded. Not once.
Yeah.
All they've done is go in a cycle of failure. And now you've got a coach in there who has had premiership success, and you want to get rid of him as well. Why don't you start turning your focus somewhere else instead of the coach every time? Because all you're doing is throwing coaches under the bus to save your own asses.
Yeah.
And it's fucking frustrating. I know a lot of fans from the club are saying, we need to get rid of Maguire because the players aren't responding to him and blah, blah, blah. I said, that's fine. You know what? We've got rid of enough coaches in the past to know that it's not the coaches that are at fault anymore. It's the players who aren't putting in. So how's about we start sacking players for a change?
And here's the thing. Like, you look at the playing roster they've got right now. If you could wave a magic wand and make them play at their absolute peak of their powers that they've ever been at in their career, they're not a finals team.
No, they finished 9th.
Yeah, at very best.
They
Like
finished ninth.
this is a team that has very little talent on the field. They don't develop too much talent through their junior base, which is gigantic, one of the biggest junior bases on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, their whole operation is just a joke. Like you and me are joking about their demountables and stuff like that. This is a club that's called the West Tigers that is trying to build a centre of excellence in fucking Concord. What the hell's that all about?
Well, that's the thing. They're now hanging their hat on the fact that this centre of excellence is going to be open very soon.
Yeah.
They're going, whoop-de-doo. Like, if you've got a bunch of players who are pea-hearts and aren't going to fucking put in for their coach because he trains us too hard, how much fucking gym work are they going to do in the centre of excellence?
Exactly.
Next to none. So why not just stick them in the demountables where it's cheaper? They're not going to be doing any extra hard work just because there's a new building with fresh paint on the wall. They don't give a fuck.
A bunch of junkies squatting in a mansion, still a bunch of junkies.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. The only review they need to do is they need to change the board.
Mm-hmm.
That needs to change a lot. I don't know how many seats are going there, but let's say they've got 10 seats on the board. Okay, they need to get one person from Balmain on the board, one person from the Magpies on the board. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Balmain and West should only have 2 of the, 20% of the seats. That's it. They get 10% each. I don't give a fuck who thinks they're putting more into the club in recent times or not. Don't care. Generally don't give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
Okay? Give them one seat each, one vote each. That's it. That's all you get. Because you know what? It's the West Tigers now. We're not Balmain. We're not the Magpies. That shit doesn't exist anymore. We're giving them one seat each just to be kind.
It's a bunch of people rattling bones at each other saying, we're the important one.
Exactly
it's like,
right.
Dude, you haven't even got a corpse there.
Exactly right. I'd give West Ashfield 5. If we're talking 10 seats, they get half of them. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they are propping the whole fucking thing up. So they deserve to get half the seats. Mm-hmm. But in order to make sure they don't have overall control, they don't get to have the head of the board on there, and the head of the board gets to have 2 votes.
Yeah.
So easy as that. That means that if all of West Ashfield vote in favour of something and everybody else is against it, it doesn't get up. Easy as that. And then you can just have other people you'd have Tim Sheens on there because he's going to be the coaching director. You need someone like that on the board.
Got to have Benny Elias on there.
No.
Sorry, I had to.
You just get people who are West Tigers people on there then. Tim Sheens was not affiliated with Balmain or West. He was a West Tigers coach. You can get 1 or 2 former West Tigers only players on there, not formerly from Balmain or West. Mm-hmm. West Tigers only. And I'm not suggesting Robbie Farah or Benji Marshall. Just someone who's got some idea about business, a bit of business acumen as well as some idea of how a club should be run.
Yeah.
Get them in there to fill it out. That's it. That way you've got an almost entirely West Tigers focused board. And the bullshit between Balmain and West can just put those 2 dickheads in the corner with the pot plants where they belong. And you 2 bicker amongst yourselves while the adults have a conversation. That's how that should work. All right. And then, as I said, Chairman Lee can fuck off. I'm done with him. He doesn't know shit about rugby league. Go and be a lawyer. Justin Pascoe, put him into marketing or finance. Get him out of the decision-making chair. Move him somewhere else where he can be useful and not painful.
I reckon send him to that fucking AFL team that they pretend is in Western Sydney. Remember Grant Meyer made that move? That's like sport purgatory. I reckon send him there.
Is that where Grant Meyer went?
I'm pretty sure it is, yeah.
Man, there's a man with a resume.
Yeah.
He was at the Bulldogs when they were going on their spending spree, signing up players on massive contract deals and stuff like that and turned into shit. And then he was, I think, some social media guy over at Manly. Or it might have been the other way. He had some fucking crowing. He was at both those clubs when they were garbage, though. And the Tigers gone, yeah, let's hire him. And
Man,
sure enough, he was shit here as well.
There was some embarrassing moments, and that's what they need to get rid of. They need some people running the club that are they've got a background that's successful in rugby league. I don't care if you're a good lawyer. You could get fucking Perry Mason in. Doesn't mean he can run a rugby league club. And
Exactly.
and although Matlock, I reckon, could steer the ship in the right way. Matlock can do anything.
He can.
What if you get, here's the board, right?
Imagine getting Columbo on there as well.
Columbo, get him on. Matlock, get Jessica Fletcher in there. She'd write a mean book about that club eventually.
Shit, yeah.
It was weird. Murder, She Wrote. She never actually wrote anything.
I wonder if she ever actually wrote the word murder.
I don't know.
It'd be funny if they found out she didn't.
Yeah.
Murder she didn't wrote.
She was just a fraud the whole time.
Yeah, she wrote cookbooks instead.
Yeah. You know why there's so like you see movies and stuff and it's always about a writer, because the person that wrote it think that they're the really important person. They're really interesting.
It's kind of like rugby league journalists.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
But yeah, that's where they need to start. And because at the end of the day, if Michael Maguire is the problem, we can also agree that the people who are hiring coaches are also making mistakes, because if they admit that Jason Taylor was the wrong coach, that's why they sacked him, even though they also hired him, and that Michael Maguire is also the wrong coach, even though they also hired him, clearly they don't know what the right coach is.
Yeah.
Because they keep sacking them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't know what the right coach is, why ask them to hire the next coach?
Yeah.
So you get rid of those dickheads, you sort out that board, and then go, right, now we've got you guys in here. How's about you guys with no affiliation with the club, and you've just turned up, you do a review of the operation here, and you go, right, this is what needs to be done. If they think a new coach needs to be hired, let them do it. Yeah. Don't let these fucking dickheads who keep making the same mistakes all the time do it, because we'll just get some other plotter come in making the same fucking mistakes because of the same stupid systems in place. The club is not designed to succeed.
No.
It's not built that way right now. And it's because of the morons who are running the club, because they like the fact that they're on the board of the West Tigers.
Yeah, and we've seen people come through that club and leave who have really enjoyed the name, being able to say, I'm the blah, blah, blah of the West Tigers. And they've come and gone and done absolutely nothing positive to the club. And that needs to end. That really needs to end. And look, I would just sit down and tally up how much they have paid coaches who they've had to sack, which is in the millions of dollars, and just say, we could have had Wayne Bennett for this money. You're fired.
They could have had Craig Bellamy.
Yeah.
And that's not even a pipe dream.
No.
He applied for the job before he went to Melbourne, and they said no.
They did a review on him, Andrew.
They did a review.
He wasn't the right man for what their goals were.
You're untested. We can't go that way. Yeah, so that's the review I'd have. That's where it's got to start. It's got to start at the very, very top. You know, as they say, the fish rots from the head. So, let's cut the head off and put a new fish head on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that works. I'm sure it's something like that.
Yeah, something along
it's fucking
those
animals.
lines.
We eat it in the end. Who cares?
It'll be interesting to see what changes they make. I feel like Maguire is. I feel like they're gonna not sack him, but I feel like there'll be some sort of ridiculous thing of like he's got 6 weeks. Where if you ever give your coach a ultimatum of like you got 6 weeks, you got 10 weeks. You obviously don't think he's the right person for the job. And as you say, these are the wrong people to say who is the right people for the job, because they keep picking the wrong people for the job in their own opinion. But, my thoughts on the West Tigers are changing very quickly, and it has a lot to do with, how the NRL competition is. And I've talked about this a bit. And I don't like saying it because I know you're a West Tigers fan and no one likes to talk about it. But if I'm the NRL, if I was running the NRL, I'd be talking to people about moving the West Tigers to Perth or Adelaide, and it's a rotten situation. And I'd move them to Perth or Adelaide, and I'd move the Bulldogs down into their area because I think the Bulldogs would absolutely kill it with that junior base. The Bulldogs aren't a great team for bringing through juniors. They've never really been good in that sense, but it's hard to mess that up and with that many juniors, and I think that they do better with it than the West Tigers. And that's just where I feel everything stands at the moment. Like, that's where I feel the West Tigers are at this point in time. And I don't like saying that, but I really do. I think the club is at a crossroads.
The other thing is, do you think if say they were to move to Perth, do you think the people of Perth would actually buy into them? If you're living in Perth and you're a rugby league fan, and they say, right, we're not going to give you your own team, but we're going to give you this shit team that doesn't know how to fucking win, and support them. Otherwise, you get nothing. That's pretty much what they're saying.
I know
have our off carts. We don't want them. They're shit here. You make them successful. Your turn.
We can't stand having these people within 2 time zones of us. So you deal with them.
We don't want these fucking bludgers anymore. It's your turn.
I know the West Australia Rugby League has said they want their own team, but they would take a relocated team. And they're one of the few places that have really said that, and they've said that consistently for about 10 years. And I'm just at a point with the NRL competition, and we'll probably do a whole episode on this where, and I've said this recently a number of times, everyone's moved, everyone's relocated, and they did it overnight. So it's not a big deal. It's not difficult. And so it just has changed my outlook on what the National Rugby League is, what it should look like, and how easy or difficult it is to get teams in markets that we need to be servicing. And when you start looking at it in that sense, you go from the bottom up of what clubs are working and what clubs aren't working. And look, let's face it, the number one club that is not working is the West Tigers. And I would say that even ahead of the Bulldogs at the moment, which is kind of crazy because the Bulldogs have been trash for a number of years now. And I still think that there's more about the Canterbury Bulldogs than there is about the West Tigers, which is tragic.
Well, again, they've got, they're stuck with coaches. So a player knows, even if they go into the Bulldogs, well, they know that, the first few years might be a bit average. We know the coach is there for the long haul because this is a club that doesn't go around just sacking their coaches willy-nilly for the hell of it all the time.
Well, and look at the players that, imagine if the West Tigers had just signed Kotrick. He would be their best signing for years and years and years and years and years. And he's an all right player.
He's a winger. He's just a winger.
He's just a big winger. And you look at the players that the Bulldogs have brought in, and you can say whether they're the right players. If the West Tigers had signed Matt Burton, which they could have really easily, and you just go down a list like that. It's sad because when the West Tigers have been good in the past, they will draw 40,000 to the Olympic Stadium for a semi-final match easily.
Yeah, of course.
And they've got that ability to be that club. But, man, how many years can you go without being that club? It's, do you lose the ability to be that club again just by being so poor for so long? I don't know.
There'll be an awful, the next time, if they ever do make the finals again, the next time they do make them, there will be an absolute novelty factor about it that people will be excited about. They'll go and watch them.
Yeah.
Oh, look, it's a new team in the finals. Let's go check this out. It's just like when the Gold Coast Chargers made the finals in 97. First time they'd ever made the finals and the only time. All of a sudden, they were everyone's second team. We're going to support Gold Coast because they've never been there before. Let's give them a go.
Yeah.
And that'll kind of happen with the West Tigers. And then it'll all dissipate the next year. That's the way it'll be.
Wasn't there finals match where I feel like it was like Wests versus Parramatta, and they pretty much got 70-something thousand people to the Olympic Stadium. It wasn't the grand final. It was just a semi-final or something. I'm pretty sure there was a game along those lines, or it might have been against the Bulldogs or someone like that. This is a team that can draw a lot of people, but I just wonder how long you can go before you lose that ability. And is there a time frame on that? Because you go 10 years, that's a bloody long time between drinks. That's you're getting to the point where somebody that was in their late 20s that was excited about that era is now, towards their 40s.
Yeah.
It's different parts of their life.
That's right. I think it's the other thing the one thing that's fascinating about this side is that they've not been in the finals for 10 years, yet they also have not won a wooden spoon. Mm-hmm. That's a remarkable amount of mediocrity without being completely diabolical at the same time. That's a remarkable balancing act.
The thing that saves them, though, and I think it might be a little bit of an anomaly in there, is that during that time you had the bottom fall out of Newcastle where they were absolutely diabolical, and then almost on the back of that you had the same thing happen to the Bulldogs. And I think that maybe saved the West Tigers a couple of times. Like, I know they haven't really finished like second last in those years, but the fact that there was somebody that come along in the league that was just so much worse than everyone else during those times probably helped them a bit.
Absolutely. And the Tigers still struggle to beat those sides.
Yeah. It sucks, man. It sucks.
It does. Now, in other news, completely unrelated to the West Tigers, have you heard that the NRL is looking at the idea of having the Dally M Awards this year hosted over 2 nights?
I did read that, and my first thought was, who was sitting down watching the Dally M saying, I wish we could drag this out for 48 hours?
I think what's happened is the same person who sat down and thought that was the same person who watched the Brownlow, the AFL award, and thought, this is great, we should do this. Problem with the Brownlow is they go through every round, every game of every round, from round 1 through to whatever their last round is.
Yeah.
And they tell you the votes for every single game. And so it goes on for fucking hours.
That sounds horrible. Who would watch that?
AFL fans.
Oh, they're stupid, aren't they?
Yeah. It's nuts. So the idea is the first night, which would be in one separate week, they'd have all the positional awards, Captain of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year. And then the following week would be the main medal vote count.
Yeah, that's a horrible idea.
I think it's atrocious.
Yeah, that's terrible. I wouldn't watch. I'd watch the positional ones. I wouldn't watch the going through every single match. Like, there's been times where they've gone through the last few rounds. I tune out when they do, most of them until the last maybe week of games if it's close. But that's it. I tune out the rest. I'm not sitting there going, ooh, yeah, I can't believe so-and-so got 3 points in that game. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah,
the second most unimportant journalist in rugby league media, David Riccio, he said, it is also what we've seen from the NRL before. They try things different under the regime of Andrew Abdo. What has Andrew Abdo done at all, let alone what was different? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
We've seen rule changes, all bad. Locations of games being used, not because of the NRL being,
being forced.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I see this as a byproduct of the way Andrew likes to test the boundaries of what we've done previously. That's how can someone who's a rugby league journalist think that they were decisions that were made to enhance the game and not understand that they were forced upon the game and they had no option other than do those things? That's wow.
Well, the
rule changes didn't even need to happen.
No, and they fucked things up.
But the locations of different games, that was entirely forced by COVID and nothing else. That wasn't some genius, game plan by the NRL bosses.
We'll just say that somebody said what would be something that is really thinking outside the box and doing something different. And I would say things like playing games in different, like say the NRL had a system where it played, a game in PNG and then a game in Honolulu, and then, if they even come out and said, well, when the New Zealand Warriors go back and can play at home, we're going to let them play all of their away games. And like if away games in New Zealand, if they were doing things like that, you could maybe say it. But it's not like there's been any innovation in the game. Like the game, if anything, has stagnated and contracted and look, a lot of it's COVID, but there's also some things that have gone pretty poorly for the game that aren't COVID related as well. The rule changes being number one.
Yeah, none of those had to happen, and they weren't forced by COVID.
No.
But no, I agree in total with you there. It's
like they had brought in a draw where instead of it being round by round, we had a stagger draw so that we had rugby league on like 6 days of the week. I'd say, yeah, wow, that was an innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
They haven't done anything like that.
No. And that's something that they could have pulled off given, half the population was sitting at home.
Yeah, perfect time to do it, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that could have worked. So I don't know. I think it's a stupid idea.
Yeah, I think that's. Oh, I can't think of too many things worse than sitting through 3-2-1 of 26 rounds of football.
I'll tell you what would be worse is the fact that on both occasions, it would be a 1 hour special of NRL 360 before it.
Jeez.
That would make it punishing.
What's really funny is this year they'll have the Dally Ams, but then they've also got Channel 9 who is backing the Players Association's awards. And the Players Association's award was interesting because it's voted on by the players itself.
Correct.
But knowing that it's going to have that foot-thick layer of Channel 9 fucking garbage on top of it, I won't be watching that.
No, I'll just be refreshing the NRL website on that one.
Yeah, like, can you imagine, they turn up to the awards and Paul Gallen tries to squeeze out a fucking sentence as he's trying to interview people. No, thank you.
Oh, that'd be entertaining. Surely. Right, we'll move on to, we've had a review.
Yes, tell me the review.
This is from Ghost of Radomir. It said, great rugby league pod, 5 stars, fun and enjoy podcast with insightful analysis, offers a different look at the game outside of the mainstream rugby league media bubble.
Wow, that's a really cool review. Thank you, Ghost of Radomir.
Yeah, awesome.
That's fantastic.
I'm just glad that Ghost can type. I thought their fingers would have just gone through the keyboard and had no impression on the keys. But that's impressive.
Everything I know about Ghosts comes from that movie with Patrick Swayze.
Oh yes, Pottery.
Yeah, remember when they were and he was I'm pretty sure he was able to finger the pottery as a ghost.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so there must be some sort of digital usage you can do as a ghost. Like, you must be able to use your fingers to a certain amount.
That's about it. Pottery and typing.
Just pottery and typing. I'm not talking about anything else.
No. We've made that pretty clear. It's pottery and typing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And have we had any emails?
We have, actually. We've got an email from one of our regular listeners in Liam. He sent this on the 13th of September. He said, hey guys, to celebrate the NRL's 10th season using its current finals format, I thought it would be a good time to get your thoughts on the old McIntyre system. Do you think if the Warriors didn't have their run in 2011, we would still be using it? And was there anything at all you liked about it? I kind of liked finishing first and second got you a massive reward in that you get an easy opponent in week 1 and in week one. Sorry, I've lost my place. It's because my screen is so far away from me when I read these emails. I need to sort that out.
Well, let me say, I didn't like the McIntyre system.
Okay.
And it was because what happened was it was all based on the higher ranked teams advancing.
Yeah.
And first played 8th, second played 7th, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
But if the bottom ranked teams won all the games, so that meant if 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th all won their games, then teams 3 and 4 are the two teams that are eliminated in week one.
And that's something Liam says he didn't like about it.
Yeah, that is stupid.
See, I really liked it. And I'll tell you why. I agree that teams 1 and 2. Here's something about the current one I don't like. I don't like in the first week of the finals that you can be the minor premiers and you have a harder game, a harder opponent to play than the team that finished 5th. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's stupid too. Because the systems that we'd had in the past, prior to the dicking around with the McIntyre system, whatever after that, is that first would often play 4th, second would play 3rd, and you do a similar system in the bottom. So 5th would play 8th, 6th play 7th. That's kind of what they did, and the top 4 teams would not be eliminated. Didn't matter who won or lost there. That's still obviously in place now. But if they wanted to make it a bit easier, they could go with, say, first playing 6th, something like that, second playing 7th, third play 8th, fourth can play 5th. And that way you sort of got the top 3 teams are then rewarded for being at the top of the table by getting to play the 3 weaker teams in the final series.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got to work out what would happen to one of the top 3 teams if they happen to lose that game.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next point, and that is we shouldn't have a top 8 at all. Because no team who finishes 8th genuinely deserves to be in the finals. And that is proven by the fact that most of the time teams 7th and 8th are making up the numbers. There's been, I think, 2 fluky runs from those 2 teams in, 20-odd years? To me, that doesn't justify keeping them in the finals. So I'd be ditching 7th and 8th from the finals and just having 1 to 6.
See, I don't mind the top 8. And I think if you look at the trend of sports around the world, there's a general move towards having half your teams make the final series, whatever format you're using. And even the NBA have extended that in the last season where they had the play-in tournament, which I'm surprised we didn't get brought up by some of the fucking terrible hack alcoholic journalists that write about the game because they're so devoid of ideas. But in the NBA, it was brought in for a reason that involved how teams were tanking to get better draft picks and things like that. And it sort of eliminated a bit of a problem where, half the competition was just tanking their season for a reason.
Yeah.
So I don't mind there being half the comp making the finals. Although having said that, if we expand the competition, I'd still keep it at 8 teams. I just think that if your team's 1 or 2, I don't mind you having the most advantages we can possibly give you. If you're team 3 and you get knocked out in the first round of the finals because you lost your game, I just have no sympathy for that team. Like, if they don't like it, finish in second place. I had no problems with the McIntyre system. I know it was very complicated once you started getting into, if there were so many different scenarios each week.
Yeah.
But I thought that it did toss up some really cool time. Like, there was a game I remember where the Panthers beat the Dragons, and the Dragons come out of that game and they're like, "Oh, we'll be right. We'll sort it out next week." And then because results went against them, they didn't play again. They were out.
Yeah.
And I thought there was scenarios like that were really cool. Whereas with the current one, I don't like the way that the first week runs.
Well, I've got an idea for you. And it's a system that the New South Wales Rugby League used for a few decades.
Okay.
The minor premier has the right to a challenge. Okay, and so the way this works is, and I'll tell you how it worked in the past. Okay, they had a 4-team final series. First played four, second played third. The two winners went to the semi-final, and the winners of those two games played in the grand final.
Yep.
Okay. If the team that finished first lost in the first week of the finals, or even in the second week of the finals, right? It was in any stage of the finals. If they lost any finals game, right? They had the right to, wait for the final series to run its course and then challenge the team that won the final in what was called the grand final challenge.
Yeah.
So the system was essentially broken in 1944. I think it was there, when it was alleged that minor premiers Newtown threw the final. So they won their finals match. They got through to the final against Balmain.
Yeah.
And that they threw the final in order to make sure that a grand final challenge was played the following week, also against Balmain, in order to get 2 gate takings for the same match. Problem for Newtown was, if that was their case, it backfired because Balmain won both games in the premiership.
That's interesting.
But I don't think that's as much of an issue now, because gate takings is not something that's that big of a deal for the NRL anymore. It's all about bums on seats and bums in front of the TVs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So how would you feel if you had the system runs its course as it does, but if the minor premier loses at any point, even in the grand final, they have the right to challenge and have a rematch or have a game against the team who wins the grand final the following week in what is the grand final challenge, which is the absolute decider. And that way you actually get some reward for getting the minor premiership.
Mm-hmm. It feels a little bit too much like a Money in the Bank match in wrestling. Like, when you're explaining all that, I just had visions of the Miz coming down with the.
I thought you were going to say visions of the was it that 8 system that they had, Super 8 system they had in England?
Oh, that's the worst one ever.
So, I was thinking what you could have is the whole grand final challenge thing, combined with the McIntyre system. That way, there's next to no chance that the top team gets fucked over at any stage.
I don't know. Like, I don't like anything that can't be explained in 10 seconds. When it comes to
I was trying to explain the history of it as well as the system itself. The system itself is a lot more easy to explain.
Yeah. I totally get it, right? But like with the McIntyre system, the one thing I will concede is that when it come time to know who was playing next week, like there would be people would say to me, "Oh, so what are the games next week?" And I would go through the scenarios and their eyes would glaze over. I would see it. And I got it. It's like, if you can't explain it in 10 seconds, like the good thing about this one is that you can explain who's playing next week in 10 seconds, right? And I think that was the funny thing about the Super 8s. Like, you needed an abacus and 45 minutes to work out what the fuck was going on. And to be honest with you, Andrew, I still can't tell you what the fuck was going on.
It had an 8-minute YouTube video to try and explain it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing was with the Super 8s, for those who don't know, and I'm not going to explain it here, but you obviously had 3 divisions in England.
Yeah.
So the Super 8s in Super League was the top 8 teams. Then the middle 8s competition, which is one they had the $1 million challenge for, that involved the bottom 4 teams in Super League and the top 4 teams in the second division.
Mm.
And then the final Super 8s one was the rest of the teams in Championship, the second division, and I think the top few teams in League One to see if a team gets promoted.
Can't remember that last little.
So they had different systems along the way. In Super League, the Super League one, all of the wins that a team had throughout the year carried over into the Super 8s ladder.
Yes.
Okay, so the problem you had there is if the team that finished 8th finished more than 7 wins behind the team that finished first, then it made no fucking difference if they won every game in Super 8s because they weren't going to get to first.
Yes, and I believe that did happen.
A lot.
Yeah, and
Like mostly what happened is the ladder after the end of the regular season remained the same after the Super 8s, which rendered the whole Super 8s process completely irrelevant.
And can you tell me, like, how many evenings did you sit down to get all of that shit onto your website, Rugby League Project, and just want to burn the world down?
We still do. Okay. I won't get into too much techie talk, but the problem we've got, okay, is because, as I just said, the Super League part of it meant that the ladder for the regular season had to be retained and carried over through the Super League season.
Mm.
It means that the Super 8s has to be regarded as a separate competition, but as a competition that runs in conjunction with the entire Super League competition.
Mm-hmm.
Which means you've then got to start creating different rules on the website so that when it does the Super 8s ladder, it doesn't include all of the teams that contributed to the Super League ladder,
Mm-hmm.
which got carried over into the Super 8s ladder. So all those teams that finished outside the top 8 shouldn't be carried over into the Super 8s, even though they've all played a part in the Super 8s, because the Super 8s is also part of the Super League. You're hearing already how complicated it is, and this is just the top half of it. Yeah. When you started going between teams involved in two different competitions,
shit,
that was even more frustrating.
You know, it's really easy to understand once you get half hour into it.
No, I've not made any headway. This is just getting more and more confusing the more I burrow down into it, but we still hate it.
How can they possibly have thought that was a good idea?
You know what's hateful about it? Is it lasted 3 years and then they went, you know what, this is no good. That might be well and good for you, Super League. We still have to create a whole heap of fucking rule exceptions on our website that have to stay in there forever for those 3 stupid fucking years.
It's so funny.
Oh, fucking stupid.
So Liam has a little bit more to his email. He said, he said, are you guys going to do some history podcasts in the off season? Yes. 100%. We'll probably do more than we did during the season. And he said, I'd love one on the 2000 World Cup. Thanks for the content, guys.
2000 World Cup is definitely going to be one that we do. And the reason why is because Freaky knows a shit ton more about it than I do. So it's something where we can both contribute to it and both get something out of it. Because I wasn't paying a huge amount of attention to what went on off the field with the 2000 World Cup as I had been with previous ones. So that'll be a good one.
Yeah, we'll probably get Richard Shaw Wright on for that too, because he's been one of the few people that I've talked to where there's an expression that sort of comes out of someone when they know about what happened during the 2000 World Cup. And he's one of the people that we've talked about on the podcast where he made the right noise, where I was like, oh yeah, this guy remembers.
Oh yeah. He still lives with the pain.
Yeah, it's like a
It's almost a shiver.
Yeah. It's like
it's close to a shudder.
It's like when you bring something up and you know the person was trying to forget that.
Yeah.
You know?
There's a combination of shiver, shudder, and utter disgust.
Yeah.
It's all melded together. See,
and they always look down to the floor like,
yeah.
Man.
Not that again. See,
shake their head.
My only off-field knowledge of it was what you told me before about the bloke who was running it and the amount of financial ruin he had afterwards and how they couldn't figure out how much money was lost on it, and they still don't know.
I loved when we didn't do that on the podcast, did we?
I don't think so.
I don't think, yeah, because I loved, like, because I said that to you, and then you started, like, Googling it, and like you would Google it and you'd just find a new article, and that was just more money lost, and like you started to get the how bad it was financially.
It was just...
and then there's like the funniest thing was when they come out with the soccer ball, and you can't, like, there's pictures online showing the 2000 World Cup ball, and you look at it and you're like, well, you know, it's a rugby league ball. It's probably a bit fatter than normal. It's a little bit like a fat rugby union ball. And you've got to remember, that's the revised ball from the one they come out with, which was literally, it was like a soccer ball, somebody that was, oh, you can't use them words anymore.
It was a slightly pointy soccer ball.
It was a slightly pointy soccer ball, Andrew. And it had 8 panels, and they said it was revolutionary. And it was simply because they thought to themselves, well, you know what? Australia's really good at throwing the ball around, so we're just going to take that handling advantage away. And every other country was like, what the fuck? And Australia said, no, that's too far.
I wonder if, well, we don't want to put a podcast episode on it, but I wonder if that whole ball design was to mimic, so to speak, the FIFA World Cup in the soccer, because that's a massive thing at the start of every World Cup. What's the ball design going to be? And I wonder if that was something they did, try and get a bit of conversation, a bit of chatter about the game. Let's fuck around with the ball. It will give people something to talk about. And, the ball's going to be revolutionary. And then everyone looks at it and goes, yeah, you know what? We made one evolutionary change in the ball, and that was when we went from leather to synthetic.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all we needed to do. Thank you. Job done.
But here's the thing, they ended up with an 8-panel ball that was pretty similar to the sort of dimensions that you'll see in a Steeden, right?
Yeah.
So there is the ability to make a ball that has some sort of innovation behind it. I actually bought an 8-panel ball because Super League played with an 8-panel ball for a number of years, and I bought an 8-panel ball in 2006 when I was over there. Unfortunately, didn't bring it back with me, but that's
how good it was.
Well, it I can't remember when I had it thinking there was anything that was weird about it, but I didn't really give it a good workout. I didn't do a lot of passing with it. It was just kind of the feel of it in my hands. And it seemed all right, but then they moved away from it anyway and went with Steedens over there in the UK. I think they went with a company called Rhino for a little while. But you find with Steeden, there's actually like one manufacturer, and I can't remember who the main manufacturer is, but they basically own a bunch of different ball companies. And so Steeden is actually owned by another company, and I just can't remember who it is at the moment. But the Steeden there's a reason why we use it and have used it for forever. Like, I can't really remember too many other balls we've used in Australia. I think there was a moment we might have used a Puma ball in internationals.
Yeah.
But over in the UK now they use Steedens from memory.
Yeah, they do. They changed over to Steeden 2 years ago, something like that, 2 or 3 years ago.
I'm sure it was from Rhino balls.
Yeah, it was.
And I never used I never have even held a Rhino ball, so I don't know if they were any better or any worse. But yeah, the 8-panel ball could have been its own revolution and something that they said, look, we're coming out with this, and it would have been fine. But when they literally made like a pointy soccer ball, it was ridiculous.
But ever so typical of what went on that year. It was fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, it was like it might not even make the top 10 most ridiculous things about that World Cup.
Yeah, but we'll definitely do an episode of that because I think it'd be be good for a laugh looking back on it now.
It really will be.
Oh, that's a good email, Liam. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thanks, Liam. That's great.
And I suppose that should probably wrap this one up, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it's cool to do a long chat, just a long format. Most prolific rugby league podcast in the world, Andrew.
That's us.
Yeah, we're the best.
We are. That is us. That is we. We are them.
Yes.
All right, people. Make sure before you do anything, you can do it while you're listening to this podcast if you haven't already. Go over to our Patreon sites. So patreon.com League Freak and patreon.com RL Project. And toss a few coins our way. That'd be fantastic. Also, you can check us out on the socials. on Twitter and Instagram at FergoFreakPod. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. So check all those out as well. We'd love it if you'd subscribe to us on YouTube, and just like heap of the videos there. That'd be amazing. Freaky, tell them about the website, mate.
We have a website.
And well done. See,
you can access it on your mobile device, on your phone, on your tablet, on your laptop, on your desktop. And what you can find on that website is lots of information about our podcast. The website address you put in is it's Fergo, sorry, I messed it up. It's fergoandthefreak.com. And if you go there, you can find all of our episodes. You click on the history button. It shows all history episodes. You click on our guests. You can see every single guest we've had on. You can listen to every single episode. You can find all of our links and all of our websites and stuff on there. It's a really cool website, and I think you should check it out.
Absolutely. What's another good website they should check out? The one you were about to say before.
Project. Rugby League Project.
Just say that one you said before. You were going to say before.
What one was that?
The leaguefreak.com one.
Oh, leaguefreak.com. Yes, leaguefreak.com is a little thing that I started back in 2004. I started it because I was getting kicked off of forums, because people that run forums are generally a bunch of balding, fat, slovenly losers that didn't like that I had a personality. And so I started a website where people could find me when I'd get kicked off them forums. And it just so happened that website became an absolutely outrageous success. And there's still people that hate the fact that the website has been going for so long. So go there, bookmark it, have a read of some of the stuff I've written, and know that every single time you go to that website, you piss off some balding idiot. Probably from the UK.
And if that's not motivation enough, nothing will be.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's.
Tell me about your website, Andrew, because I've heard you've got one.
Yeah, it's rugbyleagueproject.org. It's just a bunch of stats and numbers and the convoluted mess that is the Super 8 system.
75% of the website is just
code. It's code and queries trying to build the Super 8 system for 3 years. The other 120 years is just a piece of piss, but those 3 years.
Easy.
Those 3 years. Oh, my God. And I didn't have to write it either. I only had to try and explain how it all functioned to someone who had to write it all. Poor Sean had to find a way of showing all that. It's still a pain in the arse. Oh, man. Yeah, you go there for all sorts of rugby league history and match details. We've got the match details of every New South Wales rugby league game from 1908 till 1952 on there, as well as every game from 1974 to last weekend. So we've just got a chunk 53 to 73 left to finish off.
Wow, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
all the records, all the stats. Anything you really wanted to know about rugby league's history is all there in black and white. And it's just the number one, I think it's the number one sporting statistical website in Australia.
It is for me.
Without question, the number one rugby league statistical website on planet Earth. Every other website that tries to do rugby league stats is a pale, pathetic imitation.
You know what? I agree. Sold. I'm going to visit this website now.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I only ever heard of it. I haven't fucking been there.
Yeah. You said it was all in black and white?
Yeah.
We've got a new feature on there too. It's been around for a little while now, but we haven't really sold it too much.
Yeah.
It's got dark mode as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you can either check it out in black and white or you can check it out in black and green.
Black and green? Let me check this out. I haven't noticed this. When did you just do this?
Probably about 3 or 4 months ago. I've got to find the link to it.
Okay, so how do I do this?
Okay, if you go to the very bottom of the homepage.
Dark mode.
Yep.
Okay, go to enable, yes. Save settings. Ooh, I like this.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, let me have a look. Let's go to players, go to L. Let's go to Pierre Laxey. I don't know. I'm Australian. I'm not fucking French. He played for France between the 60s, 1960 and 1967. 12 appearances, 40 goals, 80 points, won 6 games, lost 4, drew 2.
That was when France were at the tail end of their golden period. Their golden period was about 1954 to 1964.
Yeah, he's from South France.
Most of them were.
He died when he was 61 years old, hey?
Yeah, there's some history. Who would have thought we would have had French players' dates of birth and deaths on there as well, eh?
Yeah, look, this is the cool thing about this website, right? I literally just went to it, and all of a sudden you're getting like deep into the history of the game. What we should do is we should have an episode where we just like go to a random page. You know, when we have those nights when we do that and we don't record it, and
Yes.
we end up like talking about some Fijian player that, you know, we'd never even heard of that come to the game, and he said he was 21. It turned out he was 32. I love those players. There was a few of them.
Yeah, and they play like they're 21 even when they're 48.
Oh yeah,
I love Papua New Guinean players. I could watch the way they play the game all the time.
Stanley Jean. He's still 38 somewhere.
He's probably still playing too.
I bet he is. I bet there's some like local comp he's playing in. Can you imagine how strong Stanley Jean is?
He could probably go into those world strongman competitions and just finish first without even breaking a sweat.
Probably.
You know those big concrete boulders they got to lift up.
Atlas Stones.
Atlas Stones. Those.
Yeah.
Man, everyone else gets there trying to roll it up their gut. He just pick it up and just carry it on his shoulders.
Walks in, spinning it on his fingers like he's Magic Johnson.
I don't know what you blokes are all huffing and puffing about. These things are piss easy. Drop them on the ground and just look at everyone and go, fucking run at me.
I love people from Papua New Guinea. They're just so different. It's like there's just this completely different... It must be so crazy for some of the PNG players who come from, like, they come from really deep within PNG, and they make their way through the grades and they end up playing in, just even in the Australian lower grades. It just must be like travelling to Mars and playing footy. You know, it's got to be the most incredible journey ever.
That's right. It's they've all got fascinating stories too. That's what's great about it.
Mm.
And they love the game more than pretty much anybody else does.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And there's no doubt they're the toughest footy players on earth. No, just not even a question.
I have genuinely built out of either teak or fucking rock.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
And yeah, as I said, I just love the way they run at 110 miles an hour to everything they do. Oh, they're brilliant.
Oh, I want to see him play an international, hey? Oh, by the way, there's going to be internationals.
Yeah, England's going to play France after all.
Funnily enough, the Rugby Football League have pushed back the King of Rugby League awards.
Yes, they have. The arseholes. So now we've got to wait to determine whether it's going to be an Englishman or a Frenchman who gets to be dubbed as the greatest player in the world. How's this for you? What's the bet?
Yeah.
You know how last year there was only the game between Germany and the Netherlands was the only international played?
Yep.
And they decided we're not going to have the Golden Boot Award this year because there's only one international played. What's the bet that rule gets revoked because England plays an international this year against France?
You and I both know the answer to that.
Yeah. I'll keep your eyes peeled on that one, people.
I can't wait to see who it's going to be.
Yeah. I bet it'll be English. And if they do it, I'm going to go out there and advocate for anybody who played in that game last year to be named Player of the Year, Golden Boot winner.
Well, look, we did it, right?
Yeah, we did.
We did it, and it was the case of, like, if it's international football and it's played,
this is the International Player of the Year, and we didn't, like, it just was what it was. And I think the fact that they didn't allow them players in that game to be, nominated or to be able to win that award, we both thought it was a disgrace. So if they do it this year, it just shows the double standards that they have over there, and just more fuel to the fire to their disgraceful, disgusting behaviour in England.
Fully agree. Fully agree. Alrighty, well that's a brilliant way to end the episode. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And as we said before, make sure you check us out on your podcast listening app. Leave us a review and a 5-star rating. We'll read it out on the website, read it out on the podcast, and pop it up on our website as well. Make you a little bit famous while we're at it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll let you all go.